at this point in time, I'm 25 years old. I've been tree planting for about 4 years. And I don't know if anyone here has tree planted, but it's a very, both physically and mentally and emotionally demanding job. And you're out there in the hot sun, it's raining some days it's cold, some days it's just blistering hot. And anyway, it takes a very hard toll on your body. So after 4 years of doing this, and I loved it. I loved being way up north in the bush, covered in flies. Well, I didn't love that part, but anyway, I loved the experience. I met really interesting people from all over the world, but after 4 years, I said, okay, it's time to stop this. However, somebody I'd met said, you know what, I'm looking for crew bosses, which like four men, four person, and I said, okay, I'll do it. And although I have to admit, I was a little bit reticent because this person, his name was Al, and he was, how would I describe him? If you picture a drill sergeant who has maybe had a little bit too much coffee. And so he was, anyway, an individual. And the only reason not the only reason, there's two reasons, because I wanted to go back there. Like I said, I loved this job, or loved that being up there. But I had a friend of mine, Pete, he was also gonna do this, he was gonna be the other four person. So I said, okay, he's there, and he was basically the opposite of Al. He was like level-headed, you'd always could rely on him in the pinch. He was funny, he was just a really cool guy. So I said, okay, I want to tell you a little, before I go any further, I want to tell you just a little bit more about Al, because you kind of have to understand the story, you kind of have to have a little bit of the understanding of him. So he was, like I said, he was this kind of a big 6'3", 4" kind of guy, kind of chiseled features, kind of always had a short haircut, and he was always intense. And he was, but not just that, he knew what was right all the time. He was always right, no matter what. Anyway, so another thing you need to know about tree planting is it's a very kind of equipment-intensive operation. Yes, as a tree planter, all you have is you got your bags, you got your shovel, and off you go, right? But the camp is there's like basically a central kind of tent where, there's a cook tent and there's a central tent where people after work, you hang out, you have your breakfast in the morning, you have your dinner at night, you play cards on your, when you got some time off. And that's what it is. There's trucks, there's ATVs, there's a lot of investment into this. The other thing about Al, he was a very cheap individual. So he kind of always was looking for the how would I say, a cheaper way to do things. I can't think of a better way to say it. But anyway, so the day of this kind of, when it comes to go to my, sorry, I'm just going to calm down. I'm just getting a little nervous here. Anyway, the day, thank you. That helps, thank you. Anyway, so I was a little bit late to start this contract, and it's in early May. There's still snow on the ground, and I arrived a few days late. So he picks me up at the airport in Thunder Bay. We drive about 2 hours into, on the highway into the bush, and we turn into this, where the camp was, and I see the circus tent. And it's this blue and white striped tent, and I go, okay. So I go into the tent, and then everyone's in there kind of despondent, because it's been raining for the last 2 or 3 days, and the tent was not the best tent. It was leaking everywhere. And I was thinking, oh, okay. And then my friend Pete comes off, and he says, and I go, how's it going? He goes, and I said, okay. and I see everyone's kind of like just, they're not having the best time. And it turns out, so Al, in his great wisdom, had bought the wrong stove. So he bought a natural gas stove when he should have bought a propane stove. And what that does is all the food that had been prepared was covered in a black layer of soot. So anyway, and not only that, so the contract, this particular contract was, we were planting, rather than trees, we were planting what are known as cones, with these little things. They're made out of eggshells. And so kind of a little plastic cup that you put some seeds down on the ground, and then you put the cup on top, and then you go off to your next tree. The thing is, you can't plant this in the rain, because there's a little device that gets clogged by the water. So these people have been eating sooty food and being in a kind of a tent, which is the only place where you can socialize unless you want to be outside, covered in water, and it was just a bit of a shit show. So anyway, so it was sort of, sorry, I'm gonna have to slow down again. Sorry, I just got to draw in a blank and I'm getting nervous again. So, thank you. Anyway, so this contract, so people started to quit. And as the foreperson, I said, you know, I was, on the one hand, I'm trying to keep this operation going. On the other hand, I was trying to help these people kind of do their, you know, find another job. So Al, though, would give these pep talks where he would kind of go, and he was, again, this big kind of burly guy, and and there was one of the tools that you use when you're tree planting is known as a spear, and it's, as the name suggests, it's a spear. So he would kind of walk up and down, you know, and tell people, you know, what we got to pull together and all this kind of stuff, and people were a little bit intimidated. So, but at the same time, some people would quit. So what Al would do, he would go into town. And he would kind of like go to the bars, he would find people on the street, he'd go to employment, wherever, he would just try to, he needed people, he needed warm bodies. And then, so people would come in, there'd be, you know, they would plant for a few days and they would realize, this guy's a little bit crazy, and then they would quit again. So he'd be always doing this, and periodically he'd be giving these talks, throwing this spear down. And anyway, so this went on for several weeks. And then we finally finished this contract. Then we moved on to another contract. During this time, one of the people that he picked up, his name was Willie. So if you can picture, so Willie, if a gnome could drive a truck, that was Willie. So he was like, you know, a shorter guy, stocky. He had these kind of like these smoky glasses. I don't know if you can picture him. Always wore a baseball cap. And he was, he was really good with his hands. He'd spent a little bit of time in prison for beanie, or I'm not sure exactly what. And anyway, so that's Willie, and he was a terrible tree planter. Like he could not. It was not his thing. However, he had his X license where he could drive bigger trucks, and he could fix anything. So that was his new role. So he kind of, because for moving from camp to camp, we were in this old bus. It was sort of like 70 or something like that. It was a very old, beat-up bus. And then there was this big trailer that we'd carry all the kind of the circus tent, and which he fixed eventually. He got some varnish or something anyway. But and he got a new stove too. Anyway, so so that was Willie, and so we managed to kind of limp our way through a few other contracts, and most of them were in Northern Ontario. And then the very last contract of the season was in Manitoba, way north. So we were close to Kenora. I don't know if you guys know where that is, but anyway, it was about a 14-hour drive. So everyone piles in this bus. There's this big trailer filled with the ATVs and, you know, the tent and stoves and whatnot. And we're driving. And then we finally arrive at this place. It's called Riding Mountain Provincial Park, which is, I don't know if anyone knows Manitoba, but in the middle of Manitoba, believe it or not, I didn't know this until I was actually there, there's this escarpment that's about 2 or 3 times higher than the Niagara Escarpment. So we drive up this thing, and it's kind of just goes, you know, and this big bus is just kind of just chugging along, and Willie's driving away. And then about halfway up this kind of windy road, the bus starts to kind of like complain. And it starts to slide backwards. And people are jumping out the windows. It's like, and Willie, to his credit, he's got both feet on the brake, and he's holding for dear life. And he manages to jackknife the trailer to stop it from going off the cliff. And then people are just like, "Thank you, Willie." Blah blah blah. So we unhitch the trailer, get the bus, we drive to our site. You know, and then we come back. Over the next few days, it was sort of like, I don't know, we were on an Arctic expedition. We went and got the various pieces from this trailer. And then, anyway, we set up the camp. The other thing you have to know about this part of the world is you picture the clouds come over the Rockies, and then they go across the plains for thousands of kilometers, and then they hit this thing. and the air goes up, and every day, 12:30, 1 o'clock, it rains. But it rains like a tropical rain, like it just boom, like there's like a bucket of water comes pouring down every day like clockwork. In the morning, it's clear sky. You couldn't see a cloud. 10 o'clock, a few clouds. By 12:31, it's just raining, and then by 3 o'clock, clear again. Every day later. And not only that, the ground at that part of the world is this clay, but it's not just clay from whatever, like at a pottery class. It's a sticky blue clay. And it clouds up, or sorry, it clogs up cars. It doesn't matter. If it's a 4x4, ATV, anything, it gets stuck. So you have to so in the morning you have to go out there, and then you so there's basically a part of the day where you can't drive at all, because it's soup. Anyway, on this particular day, Willie and I, we are, whatchamacallit, we're out there on the block. It's about, 11:30, 12, and we're collecting the empties. So the trees come in these trays about maybe this big, and it's sort of like popsicles. The trees are like popsicles. So we're collecting all the empties, so we have to take them back. We have to give them back to the M&R. So we're there, and it's getting darker and darker. Like again, we know this is going to happen, but this particular day, something was different. There's this kind of this greeny, almost like bioluminescence. And then I noticed at one point, the hair on my arms starts to stand on end. And I go to Willie, I go, we gotta hurry. And then I go to push up, I wore glasses at the time, I don't wear only now for reading, but anyway, I go to push up my glasses, and a spark flies from the end of my finger and hits me between the eyes. And then I turn to Willie and I say, and then I'm in mid-sentence, and all of a sudden there's this flash, and this explosion of sound, like lightning and thunder at exactly the same moment. And I'm just going around like I've been, and then I look over, and Willie's on the ground, and this is the first time I ever saw him without his hat. And he's the same way. Like he's like, yeah. So we go, and I go, okay, we gotta go. And then we jump in the truck, and we're driving. And then just as we get in the truck, the rain comes, and it's just pouring down. Like the windshield wipers are going like crazy. And we're driving down this kind of road, and we're trying to keep it on, and we know that we have a limited amount of time before we're going to be stuck. We get to camp, and we say, and there's people there, and we go, you see that lightning? We just got hit by lightning. And people say, oh yeah. And I'm thinking, at first I was like disappointed, and then at the same time, I realized that this was like this summer. I mean, this is just one story of many. It's such a crazy time, and people are shell shocked. They've been through the Blitz in London. They can't so. Oh yeah. Well, I shot my brother the other day. It's so. And then so, dinner time comes, and. By that point, I guess people had kind of realized that you don't get hit by lightning every day. So there was a little bit more enthusiasm to hear about the story. And then we told it, and there's, oh my God, I'm going to buy a lottery ticket. I did, but I didn't win. Anyway, a few days later, and again, it's near the end of the summer, so we all like, fuck, we're sick of tell stories. We're sick of him. We just wanted this to be over. This has been a crazy. Anyway, so again, in Al's infinite wisdom, he decides, because you can't drive on these roads, so he wants to be able to drive. There's a period in the middle of the day where you can't drive. He wants to be able to drive all the time. So he decides to take off the mud flaps off one of the ATVs to see if that'll allow him to drive. Like I said, this stuff is glue. So I said, okay, whatever. And he does it, and he does it a few spins, and mud's flying everywhere, And then he says, okay, well, I want you to come with me to go explore the block. And I go, that thing looks a little bit dangerous. And then I knew in my heart that this was probably not a good thing. And I decided to do it. And so I get on the back of this ATV, and we start going. And there's mud flying everywhere, and I'm holding on for dear life. And then the thing about Al as well is that he doesn't really think about things other than himself. So he had these big boots, these big orange kind of lumberjack boots. And so if you picture this is this like the peg where things, his boot is like this, or maybe like that, and I've got this little kind of nub that I'm kind of holding on, these little nubs at the side, and I'm trying to like not die. Anyway, so I'm holding on, and all of a sudden he goes on this bump, and then one of my legs gets off the stick, and it goes underneath one of the wheels, and I'm just like, my back gets wrenched, and I'm just like, and stop the car. Thank you, the ATV. So he stops, and he goes, what happened? He goes, what did you do that for? And I go, and then anyway, so he kind of drives slowly back with me, and I'm just like, I have to lie on the ground for a while. I even grab him. Like to this day, my back's still messed up. He drives me slowly back to the camp, and he said, would you like some painkillers? And I go, he goes, well, it turns out he's been on painkillers this whole summer. Because he messed up his shoulder, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I say, okay, yes. And so he drives me into town. They say, your back is screwed. You gotta, but there's nothing we can do. There's nothing broken, you need physio. So I said, well, it's like 3 or 4 days left in the season. So I said, okay, I'll come back to camp. And I'm back, and I go back there, and I'm kind of hobbling around, trying to do whatever I can, which isn't much, but I did the best I could. And at that point, I reflect on, like, this summer. Like, it was one thing after the other. There were bears and cars off cliffs, and it was just one crazy stuff. And I thought that the thing that really kind of, like, came to me, and I wouldn't say it came to me like, oh my God, and I've all changed. It was the beginning of a change. I wouldn't say it was the change, because it's something I've struggled with for a while. It's boundaries. If I had said from the beginning, fuck off, I'm not going to do this, but I didn't, right? And then now for the last however many years, I've had this problem with my back. I mean, it happens from time to time. It's not, don't feel that sorry for me. But anyway. And then I guess that was the beginning, because like with Marsha, I started thinking, well, what's the moral of this story, other than this crazy story? And I think the moral for me anyway, it was that just coming to the point where you begin to think about where your edge is. No, this is where I stop. I'll do this, but there's my edge. And I think with him too, it's just like, I think I have too much pity, because I knew that it was a dumb idea. I knew there was lots of his little speeches were dumb, but I had pity for him in a way, and also maybe there was fear of being rejected. I'm not sure exactly all the bits, but I guess that was the beginning of my exploration of my edges. Anyway, well, thank you so much.